Hello, Richard. Thank you for inviting me. My name is Alexandra Reynolds. We can move. I am from Lisbon, which is a beautiful city and the capital of Portugal. I've been many years away now, and I left in 1994. I studied prior to that. I studied in Portugal. I studied painting, fine art, in the Academia de Bellas Artes of Porto and Lisbon. And a couple of years later, I went to London to do a master's in arts at the Chelsea College of Art. And later on, I had taught before in Portugal 1 year, so I really enjoyed teaching. I worked as an artist as well, but also was a survival thing. I needed to have a job that allowed me to survive in London. So for most of the jobs I was applying to, I was overqualified. So because I was keeping my studio practice at the same time. So I decided to do a teacher training course in London. So yeah, and that was actually really good, very good training. Was more geared towards the British system. Well, was completely geared towards the British system, which is the GCSE system. And yeah, maybe we can move on. So I taught in many schools in London. Before that, I taught in many schools in London, and eventually I went international. So from being a student at school and at university, I realized that the best thing that we can do is to use the facilities and resources as most as we can, because it's quite a special time to be a student. We have a lot of resources, facilities, teachers that will support us, and lecturers. So we need to obviously be curious and self-motivated, and that's the best part of being a student. Not just going to parties. I really enjoyed partying as well, but I think using the facilities as much as possible is really important. From being an artist, of course, being an artist is difficult. I had my successes, and I'm very happy with what I did, from residencies to exhibitions in different countries. But it's very difficult to fund yourself in order to survive. Sometimes you have bursaries, sometimes you have to get other jobs. But you learn a lot, especially about, you need to keep your drive, your agency, and you need to ask questions, and you need to ask information. I did this prior to the internet, so it was even more difficult to get information about organizations or exhibitions where I wanted to apply to. And these days everything is on the internet and you can just find so much information. But at the time it was all a bit of a word of mouth, so you really needed to ask. From becoming a teacher, at the start of becoming a teacher, I thought, it's a really big transition from being an artist to becoming a teacher. And then I realized, as a teacher, you can be so creative. So I kind of transferred, when I understood that, I transferred my creativity to helping students to thrive. And yes, and that actually made me happier, and I think I became a better teacher. So yeah, we can move on. So I taught in 1 year in Portugal, and then I was in various schools in London. Firstly, I was just working for the first 3 years through agencies, because obviously I was working as an artist at the same time. So I worked when I wanted, and eventually I decided to go full time, because I was offered many jobs that I didn't want. So eventually I liked a school that offered me a job, and I stayed there. Then I went to another one. I stayed in both for quite a while. And eventually, after 16 years in London, I decided it was time to move. I never planned to stay such a long time in London. So there was an opportunity to go to Berlin. So I took the chance. I was there 3 years. And then I moved to Uzbekistan. In Uzbekistan I had a fantastic opportunity, because I had to set up the department from the start. There was no design as such, as a subject. So it has been an amazing experience. So you have to start a project from the start, and I like to develop things and establish them. So I have some experience of teaching art and working as an artist. Art is really important it's a bit like learning a foreign language. It's very important to see, art has its own language, the principles of art and design. But it's a little bit like learning a different language. Is a bit like a child being bilingual. They see from an earlier age the images in 2 or more words. So that it may take a bit of time to develop, but then once it's established, you can make many more connections, and you become much more flexible, and you can make easily connections between the areas of learning. Also, art can involve so many areas, history, anthropology, psychology, the practical skills. So, sociology. So it depends, different artists work in different areas. So you can actually open your horizons a lot. And you have to transfer what you think and what you see into a piece of work. So, So it's like almost a translation. So you have to kind of analyze information, take it in, and produce a piece of work that reflects the message that you want to communicate. So the interesting thing is, of course, there's an emotional side to art, to design, to anything you do, really. I think the emotional side is often overlooked. People always think about the rational, but less about the emotional. But we should give a lot of emphasis to the emotional, because most of our decisions are actually emotional. So, and it does help independent thinking and agency, basically. So in art, you also have to analyze. It's not just painting a picture. You actually have to research, to question, to analyze. Maybe we can move. Now, there are differences between art and design. Obviously, design, you always design to help others to have an easier life. In art, you can design for yourself, or you can design, in art you can produce work for yourself, or you can produce work for others. Is the choice of the artist. In design, we always design for others. We help others to solve problems. So design is a problem-solving subject, and allows students to develop so many skills. You could think about analysis, planning, evaluation, development of ideas, critical thinking, creative skills, and you could even think about independent work, agency, self-motivation. I think design actually excuse me, design includes all the possible skills that one can imagine. And often within solving a problem, you do need to use all your skills. There's no chance that you can leave any skills out. So you have to collaborate with others. You have to work on your own. So, you need to use all the skills. So design basically works as we normally follow a design cycle, and is an iterative process, which means you don't need to follow a process or the design cycle linearly. You can actually start somewhere else. You end up covering it all, but you can start wherever you feel like in the design cycle, and then you can go backwards and forwards as you need until you have your final solution and a model of it that works. So the different design these days is even actually very used in companies to help solving problems and systems, because the designers have a different way of thinking, which is now fashionably called design thinking, which is not, because designers are not afraid of making mistakes. Actually, mistakes are part of the process. You do mistakes, you test the outcomes, they work, they don't work, and then you go back and you improve them. For example, a designer designing a chair for a plane might take 8 years to design, a chair for the client that is suitable. Of course, in classes, we can't take such a long time to develop a project, but we try to give students realistic situations. So, so I think this pretty much, actually, I just realized there's a letter missing here and there, but never mind. I will have to update this. So I see myself, I like to think about my classes as a team, a design team, and I'm the facilitator of the class. I give the same problem to the students, or maybe the same situation to the students, and then they identify the problem and they take it their own way. So rather than, for example, when I taught in GCSE, in the British system, the students pretty much produced the same thing, so it was a little bit boring for me. It was the feeling of having the students on a conveyor belt. And then I moved to the IB system, and the IB system design fits so well with the IB system, because actually the students are supposed to develop that independence and the thinking and the creativity. So basically we guide them, but depending on their needs. So I may give them a situation, or sometimes even at the start of a design problem, and then they take it their own way and they solve it, and then the design solutions are varied. So, what I like also about design is that it's very project-based, and I think teaching is getting in that way. In the past, memorization, I read an article yesterday about memorization, and it's actually, makes a lot of sense. It's like, if you memorize something and you don't put it in action, after 6 days, you forgot about it, if it lasts 6 days. So when you actually put your knowledge into practice and learn from researching yourself and from finding your own ways and applying that knowledge, your learning increases and stays with you. And I remember also from being a student, I had to study for tests, when I had to memorize things for tests. And then, of course, after the test, everything disappeared. I still remember bits, but, not the amount I had to remember for the tests. So, we live in a world, obviously, that has a lot of problems. I think currently even more than before. and we have to prepare students for any eventuality. And the best thing we help them with is at solving problems. So that's where the creative and the critical thinking skills come into place. They need to learn how to communicate and how to collaborate. And students that need that these days, we have the internet today, so they can actually go and find information for themselves. They just need to know what sources they should trust, and how to, they should not plagiarize, and they need obviously to make sure whatever research they do, they need to indicate the sources in a particular format. But in the past we had to go to libraries, sometimes books wouldn't be so accessible. Now you can find everything online, so it's just they need to learn how to differentiate the sources, the fake sources, the real sources, and then I think the internet really helped to move into project-based work and to independence and self-motivation. And I think students get a bit bored these days from memorizing. So when you actually show them project-based, or sometimes even subjects collaborating together, doing interdisciplinary work, they actually look at they actually realize that the knowledge is all connected. And of course, all that creates a lot of understanding of what's going on and makes them more independent. But we need to guide them towards that independence. And the world is moving all the time. If we don't help them to have those independent skills through project-based work, they will not thrive in the world. It's like basically people that they never left their own country and didn't see the perspectives, or their own village. Sometimes still happens, or people that never really discussed anything with others. So we need to look at the different perspectives and make our own. So of course, we also teach students to be respectful. We work with different cultures. I know one of the questions about cultures, so I can answer it now. I have students of many cultures, and a lot of Koreans, Americans, like the bigger groups, and then we have students from locals as well, and then we have students from all over the place, many languages. I think it is very important to be respectful in an international, not just in an international setting, but in all the settings. Students deserve all our respect. We can actually learn with the students because they have their own perspectives. I see myself as a facilitator. I tell my students I don't know everything. It would be amazing if I did. I don't believe anyone knows everything. So I tell my students I learn with them. Sometimes they are much faster than me learning a software that is needed for 3D drawing, and they show me how to do this or how to do that. So, or sometimes I learn from their perspective. They say something that I think, oh, I never thought about that. So I think we do, as teachers, facilitators, we do need to be positive towards students to motivate them. And obviously respectful. They are, if we are disrespectful to them, they will be disrespectful to us. And as teachers, we do need to model what we would like them to do to us. So if we model, a culture of respect, we will have respect back. If we model a culture of collaboration, we will have collaboration back. I think as teachers, we have a huge responsibility towards students. We can, if we are nasty to them, we can crack them, and we can, I heard of cases of teachers bullying students, and it is it stays like a stain in their memory, and sometimes it's really harming. So I think we do need to respect students a lot. As teachers, we don't know everything, and we need to learn with the students. And sometimes we learn that they have a problem at home, and we need to be more understanding of that. We need to give them the space to be themselves in class, the space to be comfortable. So sometimes you help students beyond your subject. You help them regarding their psychological needs or emotional needs. So we need to be prepared as teachers for that and do it in a positive way. I don't think there are perfect educational systems or perfect schools. There are schools maybe that are more appropriate for some students. Other schools or systems are more appropriate for other students. But overall, I don't think there are systems that are set in stone. Definitely the IB system is always moving towards becoming better. And I think there's a lot of positive things, and I do like it a lot. It's my favorite one. Some system. I kind of spoke about this already. So especially now, I think in this time of the COVID and the online teaching actually is opening a very big scope for change. We don't know what's going to happen at the moment, but maybe there's potential for teachers not having to move. Maybe I could teach from my own country. Maybe students could travel instead of me. I could be in my country teaching, and then workshops could be made here or there. It's like it is opening a completely different system and many other possibilities. We'll have to let time carry on to see what the change will be. I think old systems that are based on memorization are really outdated. They don't make any sense with the current world. The internet and the amount of information, basically, and the access to this information made those systems I can't remember the word now, but outdated again. I think the information is all there. We just need to show students what information they need to learn to find, and how to find it, and what's reliable and not. And then, of course, it's like in the IB system, we have certain things that I really like we have CAS, like the students in DP do the CAS project, which is they need to do some creativity action and what is it? Yes, I can't remember now. But basically they have to do community projects and projects that help others. So those type of projects are really important. There's a lot of emphasis on service, so creativity, action and service. So there's a lot of emphasis even in the MYP, which is the middle years program, to have service projects where students maybe they help with an orphanage, or they teach English in local schools, or they work in a farm, for periods of maybe some days a week, or they give up their Saturday to do that, or it depends. So I think those type of projects are very important. We also have students also participate in the MUN, the Model United Nations, which is many schools around the world do that. Is a project that runs in the same way and with the same jargon as the United Nations. Excuse me. And then normally there's a Model United Nations at school, and then some students are selected to go to other schools, and then they form committees on environment, on politics, on disarmament, and they have to learn a lot about the country they can represent just a random country, so they have to prepare themselves. And prepare solutions to present to the other delegates, and try to make those solutions viable. Having, of course, they have to understand the country they are representing as well. So within that context, they need to present their solution, and they have to try to have that passed in the committee. So yes, very, very interesting thing. So I think, students from an earlier age, they are like sponges. Often they get to secondary class and they just think about the grades, and the grades kind of damage I think in a way it would be good to have schools without grades. I know universities want the grades, but the aim of the fact that they aim so much at exams, and their worries are they get so stressed with tests. Tests are okay, but when you think about exams, admission exams, I think there's other ways of assessing students, and without having so much stress, but allowing them to have many other skills that are just other than just memorization. So yeah, and I think if you prepare students, you are preparing human beings for the future. As I said before, is a huge responsibility, and as we have that responsibility as teachers. So what a student often will remember from you is if you are a caring teacher, and if your classes were interesting, and that's it. Many students will, in later life, students will mostly forget you. Especially, I have some students who keep in touch with me, and that's really nice. And come back to me on LinkedIn and on Facebook, and ask to be my friends when they finish university or when they are at university. It's quite nice to keep in touch, and they tell me what they are doing. So it's nice to keep in touch in later life. So, I think students are human beings. It's like some people treat babies as if children from babies, they treat babies as if they didn't understand it. I think when you are a parent and you look at a baby, you actually can see through their eyes that they understand, but they can't talk, and they do all that physiotherapy to try to, physical and sound therapy to be able to speak. But you can see in their eyes that they actually understand much more than what they show verbally. So, students are human beings with huge capabilities, and we need to help them. And also we need to differentiate. Students think differently. There are students with Asperger's, with dyslexia, which are out of the standard. But, in the past, these were considered diseases, but they are not diseases. They are actually just different ways. The brains are wired differently. So it's just different ways of processing. So we have to be also aware of the different ways the students learn. Sometimes a student might be disruptive. We need to find out why is the student disruptive. It's not punishing the student, because punishing the student will just make things worse, because that's probably what they are used to. So finding a way to bring the student into what you would like them to do is the most important thing. So there are different strategies, and it depends. You sometimes try things, some work, some don't work, but teaching is also a bit of a trial and error profession. You have to try. And then it is also satisfactory for you. If you are just teaching every year the same thing non-stop and you never change, it does become boring. And you become bored with what you do. So I think, trying to be innovative and to change as a teacher is also very important. We have so much to learn all the time. And that's one of the things I like about the profession. So, is that the last slide? I think?
No, I think this is the last.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Again, thank you, Alexandra. It was a great presentation. So you said some important things. The first, that we need to prepare human beings for the future, and this is teachers' responsibility. Another thing is about memorization, that it's from the past, and that we need to put our knowledge into practice in order that we can really learn some things. So now I have two questions for you. Okay,
Yep.
so I'm going to say the first question is, can you share advices, could be 3 advices for teachers to improve their teaching practices, please?
Well, in a way, I shared a lot of advice already. I think is first of all important to respect the students for what they are individually.
Okay.
I think making the students do a lot of the work sometimes that rather than the teacher doing the work for them and they just memorize it, I think having the students actually researching and finding out what they need to learn. Of course, the teacher should be guiding them, but that makes the students feel more empowered. And you end up with better teaching and learning. So by promoting inquiry and curiosity, you end up with more motivated, self-motivated and independent students. And I think, using yourself as a facilitator rather than a traditional teacher is very important. So I think teachers need to plan units to give students that opportunity to become independent, to be inquirers, and you have your role will be as a facilitator. I think those are the most important things, and respecting, as I said, respecting students' difference as well.
Yep. Okay. So the next question is related to your subject. I mean, design thinking. So what is the importance of teaching that subject for the development of a child?
Well, basically, we tend to give students realistic problems as much as possible, and sometimes, for example, as they grow older, maybe finding them a client. Sometimes when we are in a school situation, maybe the client is a parent or a friend of the parent or a teacher at school, or maybe the students. So they actually can go to the students, they can do a questionnaire about their needs, a survey about their needs, then they can go at the end and present their product and get feedback. So they actually have either a target audience or clients. Sorry, I need to go back to your question. If you could repeat it.
Okay, so the question is about, don't worry, the question is about design thinking, and what is the importance of teaching that subject for the development of a child?
Okay, so basically, you can do any project at any level with any outcome, whether it's digital or product. It doesn't matter. But having the units developed throughout the grades to become less guided, and by the time they get to grade 10, they are more independent, so they can even drive their own unit. And they can actually, they have even something else in the outside design called the personal project, which is very similar, has a very similar cycle to design. So basically, the benefit of having design is that whatever they do later in life, could be at the diploma level, could be at university or in their professional lives, they can apply a design cycle to any circumstance. Could be, for example, imagine a business person needs to develop a business plan because they want to create a company and they need funding. So they could use the design cycle to develop their idea, present a solution, so they can actually go to the potential investors and say, this is what I did, I've tested it, this is going to work, you know, and they will ask questions, and of course the maybe economist at the time already did a lot of went through the process and had a few options that were rejected because, so by the time he meets with the investors he can say, oh yes, this doesn't work because, but this will work and this is the plan and this is, you know, how we can implement it. So could think about scientific research in the area of sciences, so can use a very similar cycle. I used to tell my students that you can even solve a problem with a friend using the design cycle, because what you do is, okay, you identify the problem, what do? You need to investigate it, what happened before. Maybe you go to another friend for advice or someone you trust, they give you some advice, and then you think, oh, what is the best option for here, and you start thinking about you know, how you are actually going to solve it. You start coming up with ideas, you choose your best idea, and then you plan how you are going to put it in practice, and eventually you go to your friend and you speak to your friend, and you then try to solve the problem, and then you look back and you think, oh yes, I did the right thing, or maybe I should have taken it a different way, so you start evaluating. I'm just saying it can be applied even in people's relations, but definitely in professional areas, and at university, and later on in the DP program. So yeah, it's like basically it's a problem-solving subject. So you will learn how to solve any problem, and life is full of problems because it's always changing. Every day we have new problems, and problems are actually good. Rather than us crying over problems, let's see that actually, you know, problems is what drives you. That you know, is like what drives life. Life is full of problems. Every day we can have personal problems, work problems, you know. And how do we solve world problems? How do we solve these problems? We apply the design cycle.
Yep, sure. Okay, and before we finish, I would like you to say a message, okay, for all our students who are going to view this interview. For example, how they can be more self-motivated, okay? So what message can you give to them in order that they can give more importance to their own education?
Well, like I said to my own children, whatever you do is for yourself. So I never asked my children to be the best, but I just said to them, whatever you do is for yourself. So if you do better, it will be for yourself. So it's very important to be curious. If you have questions, ask them. Yeah, it's just sometimes we cannot like everything. You know, we can't sometimes, maybe we don't like math, or we don't like geography or history. I remember when I was a student, I didn't really like history because it was so boring in my country. It was all about how the Portuguese were so good in the past. And it was really, really boring. And history is such an interesting subject. So at the time I thought, well, I have to do this. I was probably in year 8 or 9. And I thought, I have to do this subject. How can I do it? And I enjoyed reading a lot. And reading is also actually very important. So I thought, well, maybe I try to read these 3 books as if they were novels. And that's how I found my way around it. And sometimes, you know, and that's another thing that design teaches us, is like, sometimes you don't like something, but you still have to solve it. So you have to find your own way of enjoying it. And I think, yeah, that is necessary for life. And if you want to be a happy person, you need to do that.
Okay, so it was a great presentation. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much as well.
Okay, so I think that it's going to be so important for all our students, for all our teachers who are going to see our interview.